Hello house lovers. It is another very beautiful sunny day in winter in Melbourne. It has been cold and miserable and it has been wet and damp and foggy, so we are getting a little bit of winter, but come inside, I feel we need to talk more about fireplaces. A friend sent me a message after last week's epic episode about fireplace and mantelpiece removal, wondering why I was taking out the cast iron inserts, and I thought, there's a question that I perhaps didn't answer very well, and maybe it's a question, a conundrum that many of you have had to figure out about fireplaces in old houses. So let's do a bit of fireplace modernising 101. This is the fireplace in the former presidential suite. So here we have the original cast iron insert. This house was built in 1874, as we know, and this is very typical of the period. There's a few bits missing here. So what would have sat in the front is a basket, and then there are various other bits of ironwork that would have sat in here to create quite a small contained area, because this fireplace was built to burn coal. Coal was more expensive, but more efficient. You needed a smaller area to contain the material and better heat projection from the iron, and then a smaller flue to draw the fumes and the smoke up. Coal was expensive, so it was used in high status rooms, which this would have been, and a room that was probably used quite often too, so having an efficient and practical heat source was very important in Melbourne right now, because let me tell you, it has been getting chilly. Let's look at the other sort of fireplace that I found, which is this one. This is George's old room, and you have the brick arch and you have these brick steps. So this fireplace would never have had, and didn't have, the iron insert, because this would have been a wood burning fire. This is one of the rear bedrooms, a secondary bedroom. The main bedroom is at the front. This is typical of a log burning fire, and you would have had, just sitting in here, an iron basket that you put the logs in, and it's easy to clean the ashes out from underneath. And I must confess that it's this sort of fireplace that we can see in George's room like that I just prefer the look of aesthetically and practically. So these fires, you can still just get your cast iron basket and you can still burn logs, and it's still efficient. What you need, or what is useful, is to put some kind of cast iron backing at the rear of the chimney, and what people in country Australia used to do was use old ploughshares and lean it at the back, and it acts as a radiator to push all the heat into the room. But you can also get beautiful cast iron fire backs that do the same thing. Which leads us then to the million-dollar question: what are you going to do with the old fireplaces in your house? And fireplaces were included in builds up until the 60s in Australia, so a lot of people would buy houses that have fireplaces in one condition or another, like this one. So I guess there are some questions to ask yourself. The first thing is, how are you going to heat the house? That will answer some of the questions you might have about the fireplaces. Now, you can insert into the original fire aperture sensational gas or electric heaters that look like fires or don't, or whatever they might be, but they can actually still sit in the aperture and perform the same function of driving heat into the room. The second thing is, you could do, as has happened in other parts of this house, is completely remove the chimney breasts, removing the chimneys, straighten the lines of the room, eliminate all traces of the old fireplace, and have some other sort of heating, whether it's ducted, underfloor, etc., etc. The other thing you might want to do is just maintain the fireplaces aesthetically, but you've got other heating, whether it's reverse, ducted, hydronic, whatever it might be. So then the fireplaces just become an aesthetic marker of the room, and often having a mantelpiece and a fireplace does really give a room a point of focus, and it can ground a room. So they look great, even if you're not going to use it. And then perhaps the old school option is that you are going to use it as an open fire. Now, I would imagine it's not going to be your primary source of heat, as it won't be here, but we are going to have the white marble mantelpiece fireplace will be a working one, and so will this one. And that's really just for aesthetics and ambience, I have to say, because we're going to have a new heating system in the house. For me then, it really just becomes a question of practicality and aesthetics. How are you going to heat the house? Are the fireplaces still relevant? What condition are they in? Do they work aesthetically? Are they structural? So the other issue with chimney breasts is that they often have become used as part of the structural support of the upper floor, if you've got upper floors, or of roof joists if it's a single-story building. So there might actually be structural issues, which mean you can't remove the mantelpieces and therefore have to keep the fires. Now, I know purists are going to have conniptions when I say this, but I just find that these iron inserts are just a little bit tight, a little bit mean, a little bit prissy. I just prefer the wide open aesthetic of this, which is the fireplace that's in George's room. Maybe it's because these were the type of fireplaces that my mum's house had, which was an old colonial house in the southwest of Western Australia. But I just find them honest, open, unpretentious, and very practical. There you are. So the question really becomes, firstly, how are you going to heat your house? The next thing is perhaps more of a philosophical question, which is, are you conserving, restoring, or renovating? All of which will decide your attitude to the fireplaces and the mantelpieces. So we are renovating, which means using the core of the building but transforming it to becoming something else. If you were restoring a house, you would be very historically accurate. So you would be reinstating the fireplaces they were, which included all the metalwork. There's lots of debate about that, particularly with old houses. My thought is that they need to stay relevant for the future, and they need to stay relevant for families and future ways of living. So saying, if you have an older house, a good rule of thumb is to say whatever you're doing could be undone. So for example, me taking out the iron inserts is a simple task because they're just sitting in front of the aperture, and someone down the track could very easily put them back again. I'm not an advocate for stripping out period detail in houses, but I am an advocate of making the house modern and relevant for the way we live today, which is a Trollope novel, I think, one of my favourite writers. Quick aside, while we're in the radiator room, do you remember that this was Mattie's sanitary ware emporium? All the sinks and the basins and the lavs and the shower screens, all gone. And do you remember the last thing was there was a shower basin just lurking in the corner there? Do you remember? The shower screens went, all the lavs, all the sinks. The last thing, as you can see, is the enamel shower basin, and someone has promised to pick it up this weekend. I'm here to tell you that it was picked up this weekend by a chap who lives out in the country, and he is going to be using it as a duck pond. It's sitting on top of a hill. He wants to be able to drain the pond easily every now and then and use that outflow to water the garden, but provide a permanent little pond for his ducks. And he was tired of using plastic children's paddling pools because they kept deteriorating in the sun. I think that is the perfect manifestation for my ethos of waste not, want not, that it would have been easy to have put that shower basin in landfill, but no, it is being used to make ducks happy. There we are, house lovers, and thank you, Rob, for the question about fireplaces. I guess the bottom line is that there are no rules, except try not to do something to a historic house that can't be undone by someone who might wish to reinstate what was originally there. There we are, house lovers. We were going to talk structural engineering today. Contain your excitement, maybe next week. I hope the week has been manageable. It's been such a tricky time for everyone, I think. In the meantime, thank you very much for watching, and thank you for engaging. I'm enjoying this process, and maybe you are as well. Anyway, we'll see. There we are, house lovers. Until next week, take care, and thank you for watching. So obviously, you need to press like, and you need to hit subscribe, because just because.